Rudo is a poor, scruffy outcast with no friends, spending his days scavenging through the trash in the wealthy part of the city. One day, he spots a rich woman toss out a trash bag with a doll inside that looks practically brand new. Intrigued, he heads toward the city's waste collection zone, sneaking into one of the garbage sorting rooms to search for discarded valuables. Unfortunately, Rudo isn't exactly subtle. A security guard catches sight of him, and surprisingly, the response is extreme. The guard draws his weapon immediately. Apparently, rummaging through garbage is a serious offense here. Once it's clear, Rudo is a trash raider. The guard sounds the alarm for backup. Rudo knows he can't stick around, so he dives into a trash chute and scrambles upward, trying to escape. But by the time he reaches the top, the area has gone into lockdown, and the exit gate slams shut in front of him. The guards catch up quickly, and without warning, they open fire just to keep him out of their garbage. In a desperate move, Rudo activates something deep inside him, reacting with inhuman speed, fast enough to dodge bullets at close range. The guards, unaware he had this ability, had every intent to kill him over mere trash. Rudo manages to squeeze through a nearby door and bolts toward the loading dock as bullets chase him. One shot grazes his arm, but he pushes through the pain and climbs over the compound wall to freedom. He hides in the sewers until the danger passes. Confused and shaken, why would they go to such lengths to protect garbage? By morning, word of the trash intruder spreads across the city. Outrage follows not at the guards, but at the idea that someone from the slums dared to touch what the upper class had thrown away. In this divided city, society is split. The spotless, high-tech world of the city dwellers, and the dirt-covered forgotten zone of the so-called tribesfolk who live in filth and desperation. It seems that the news about the trash raider are also talked in filthy part of town, and it seems they know who did it. Later on, Rudo is confronted by his friend Chiwa, who yells at him for going to pick up trash again, and worries about what will happen if he gets caught. He agrees with her, but points out that they're throwing away perfectly usable things. By taking and fixing them up a bit, he's able to make some money by selling them and covering his expenses. A group of local boys suddenly show up, and, without any reason, they start throwing insults at Rudo. They tell Chiwa she shouldn't waste her time with someone like him, a nobody with no future. Rudo tries to keep his cool, staying quiet as the verbal jabs keep coming. But then one of them knocks over a lantern. Rudo is carefully repairing and sneers, saying no one would ever buy something touched by filthy hands like his. They go further, mocking him for being the son of a murderer. That one cuts deep. Rudo had been doing everything he could to ignore them, but dragging his father's name into it hits a raw nerve. The group keeps running their mouths, claiming the slums were built as a prison for criminals and that now, as the children of those criminals, they all need to behave perfectly just to earn a chance of being allowed back into the city. They blame people like Rudo's father for ruining that chance for everyone, saying his violent past has marked them all. The ringleader keeps talking, way too bold for someone standing within kicking distance. That final remark is too much. Rudo glares at him with such intensity that it freezes the group in place. The look in his eyes makes it clear he's had enough. They immediately rethink their bravado and begin backing off, choosing to walk away before things turn ugly. When they're gone, Rudo quietly kneels to pick up the broken lantern, as if used to being treated like trash. But to his surprise, Chiwa is still there. She never left. She looks at him and says she knows he's a good person. It's the kindest thing anyone has ever said to him. And for a moment, Rudo is left speechless, not even sure how to react. Just then, Chiwa notices the toy that Rudo was fixing up, and she absolutely loves it. As Rudo was explaining that he fixed it for her, suddenly her mother calls out to her to go home, leaving our boy with the doll in his hand. After that, Rudo also heads home. But as soon as he opens the door, he finds Regdo with a wide smile on his face. He was spying on him earlier and keeps on mocking him about his failed confession earlier with a dead look on his face. Put that aside, he wants to talk about the trash raid last night. Regdo tells Rudo that he shouldn't put himself in danger, since they're not that hard up, and that he just wants to handle things until Rudo is old enough. Rudo says that no one has ever found him before, but Regdo reminds him that he was almost captured last night. He adds that even though they're not related by blood, they're still family, so Rudo should stop acting like he owes him something. We learn that Regdo found Rudo abandoned as a baby and raised him. He explains that this isn't about a debt. It's about showing respect as family. Regdo notices Rudo's wound and realizes it came from a bullet during the trash incident last night. He tells him to take off his gloves while he changes the bandages on his hand. As he's bandaging him, he warns Rudo to stay away from the trash for a while, so the injury doesn't get worse. Rudo replies that it's nothing compared to the wounds his father left him. We learn from Regdo that anyone who commits a major crime is thrown into the pit, where all the trash ends up, and that Rudo's father was one of those people. Regdo tells him to take care of himself. Even in this messed up world, Rudo still struggles with painful flare-ups from his injuries. Most people turn away the moment they notice, treating him with disgust. But Retu was different. He once gave Rudo a pair of special gloves that helped ease the pain, and Rudo has cherished them ever since. Putting that aside, Retu gives Rudo a nudge, saying he should confess to Chiwa soon before someone else beats him to it. Rudo clearly doesn't want to talk about it, brushing off the suggestion. While the two bicker inside, a masked figure quietly watches the house from outside. The next morning, Rudo takes Ritu's advice to heart and tries to practice smiling, thinking it might make him seem more approachable. But after a few awkward attempts, he sighs and gives up, deciding a smile won't help when you're just plain ugly. Still, he wants to give Chiwa the doll he found, so he heads toward her home. On the way, his thoughts drift to the pet, a massive garbage drop used for both trash and public punishment. Everything the city wants to discard ends up there. Criminals and so-called useless citizens are thrown in as a form of execution. Rudo has always wondered what really happens to those who fall in. By chance, Chiwa appears. She shares how much she hates the pit, and how it feels like a threat hanging over everyone who lives in the slums. It's a reminder that if any of them step out of line, they could be thrown away like garbage. She doesn't want that to happen to Rudo. She understands why he hates how the wealthy throw away perfectly good things. But she pleads with him to stop risking his life. It's only a matter of time before he gets caught. Rudo chuckles, saying, Ritu told him the same thing last night. Chiwa smiles and says that's probably because Ritu loves him just like she does. Rudo keeps laughing, but suddenly freezes as he realizes what she just said. Chiwa quickly panics, trying to walk back her words, saying she didn't mean it in a weird way. But for Rudo, this is the moment he's been waiting for. Nervously, he holds out the doll and tells her he found it and thought she might like it. Chiwa lights up, touched by the gesture. She promises to treasure it forever. Rudo is stunned. It went way better than he imagined. Not knowing what to do with the moment, he awkwardly bolts away, eager to tell Rudo what had just happened. As he made his way through the slums, he bumped into some guards. They didn't pay him any attention, but he couldn't help wondering what they were doing in a place like this. He continued home. As soon as Rudo opened the door, he began to speak, ready to share his news, but he froze, horrified. Rudo was lying on the ground, and a masked man was crouched over him. The man turned briefly to glance at Rudo, then drove his knife deeper into Rudo's body. Shocked and furious, Rudo charged at the masked man, but he was struck with such force that he blacked out before realizing what had even happened. Rudo saw him calmly picking up a book from the floor and glancing at him before walking out. Rudo tried to go after him, but then he heard Rudo's voice. Somehow, Rudo was still alive, with his final breath, insisting he would find help, but Rudo refused. He told Rudo not to waste time, to escape, and to change this filthy, broken world into something better. After saying this, Rudo's body went limp, and Rudo was left stunned and unable to process what had just happened. At that very moment, soldiers burst in. Without asking questions, they zapped Rudo, knocking him to the ground. They accused him of murder and pinned him down. Rudo insisted he wasn't the killer. He tried to explain that the real murderer had just fled the scene and could still be caught, but the guards ignored him. One of them silenced him the old-fashioned way with a punch to the head. Rudo was dragged to the public scaffold for execution. A crowd from the slums had gathered to witness his punishment, and even some officials from the main city were present. The judge addressed the crowd, stating that murder was one of the gravest crimes. Although Rudo was only a slum dweller, the judge declared that the punishment would remain severe. Rudo was sentenced to death by being thrown into the pit. Cheers erupted from the crowd, but Rudo was in disbelief. All he wanted was for anyone to believe he wasn't a murderer. His eyes searched through the faces in the crowd and landed on Chiwa. Desperate, he shouted to her, swearing he hadn't killed Rudo, and begging her to find the real culprit. But Chiwa simply looked at him and said she had trusted him, only to be betrayed. In her eyes, he was just the son of a murderer. After all, without another word, she dropped the toy she had once given him and turned her back. That moment, her rejection cut deeper than anything else. Crushed and furious, Rudo lashed out at the crowd. He called them the true filth, not him. In his eyes, they were nothing more than mindless meat, without thought or will. He swore he would send them all to hell. And then, suddenly, he saw the masked man in the crowd. Before he could cry out or point him out, the guards threw him over the edge. Rudo felt like he was falling forever. The heaps of garbage below had broken his fall. The overwhelming stench hit him, even making someone used to garbage like him instinctively cover his nose. Then, he saw it, a massive, endless sea of trash, littered with strange, unfamiliar objects. As he tried to comprehend where he was, giant shadow loomed over him. He turned around and froze in terror. A massive creature, made entirely of garbage, was staring him down. Rudo's mind went blank the moment he saw the monster. He remembered how he always found it strange that people were obsessed with sending garbage and so-called human filth to the bottom of the pit. Yet no one ever seemed to care what actually happened down there. The thought of what might exist at the bottom had always disturbed him more than anything else. Snapping out of his thoughts, he began to run for his life as the gigantic trash monster approached. Things quickly escalated when the creature let out a deafening roar, causing several more monsters to emerge from the garbage heaps. They all began chasing Rudo. He ran as fast as he could, but it was useless. He was soon cornered. In panic, he questioned what these things even were. Were they truly animated piles of junk? As the monsters lunged at him, Rudo dodged them, narrowly avoiding their attacks. In his attempt to escape, he tripped and fell face first onto a human skull. In that instant, he understood the fate that awaited him. Furious, he cursed those who had thrown him into this hell. Suddenly, the garbage heap beneath him collapsed, and he slid down to the base of a cliff, which, for the moment, kept the monsters away. But now another danger threatened him. The air itself. He realized that breathing too long in this place would tear his lungs apart. It was literally toxic. Covering his nose and mouth with his gloves, he searched desperately for a place to recover. But the more he looked, the more hopeless it seemed. There might not be a safe space in this nightmare at all. He began to lose hope. Blood gushed from his mouth, and the sound drew the monsters back to him. Collapsing on the ground, paralyzed, and breathless, he was ready to accept death. Then, a memory of Rego's dying words surfaced in his mind. In that moment, something stirred inside Rudo. A strange power surged through his hands, though he wasn't yet aware of it. Instead, he simply noticed his vision-changing lights began to glow from within the garbage, including a pipe lying ahead of him. Driven by the memory of Rudo, Rudo crawled toward the pipe, determined not to die. He grabbed it and stood up, vowing to return to the surface, to take revenge on the people who had thrown him into this place, and on the one who had murdered his father. Fueled by rage, he barely noticed the monsters creeping up behind him. As one of them lunged, Rudo swung the pipe without even looking. The strike sent the creature flying. It crashed into the umbrella of a strange man nearby, who seemed surprised to see someone actually capable of fighting the monsters. Rudo, meanwhile, had gone wild. He fought with total disregard for the toxic air, for the blood streaming from his nose, or even for the fact that he was being slammed into rocks. One monster crushed the boulder he was on, burying him under the rubble, but he emerged angrier and stronger. He tore a metal pole from the pile and struck the monster with full force, dealing serious damage. Another beast rose from below, and Rudo leaped to avoid its jaws. But the toxic air finally took its toll. Blood poured from his mouth again, and he collapsed. The monsters seized the opportunity, moving in, but Rudo's mysterious power activated once more. Despite everything, he stood his ground, facing two monsters at once. He survived the impact. Grabbing a sheet of metal, he sliced through one of the monster's skulls, then turned to the second and cleaved it in half. Exhausted, he paused to catch his breath. But another massive creature approached. Rudo decided to retreat and recover, but the monster slammed the ground, releasing a shockwave that sent him flying. When Rudo opened his eyes, he was stunned to see a masked man standing over him. Before he could react, the stranger lifted him up and kicked him forward. Rudo spat out blood, preparing to fight, but then the man placed a gas mask over Rudo's face, letting him breathe. Still disoriented, Rudo asked if the man was a local, and if he knew what this place was, including what the monsters were. The masked man simply told him to be quiet. Rudo kept talking, pushing for answers. The man again told him to stay silent. When Rudo asked if they were underground, the stranger finally lost his patience. The man shouted that they weren't underground, they were above the surface. He blamed the people living in the sphere above for turning this place into a wasteland. He explained that the monsters made of trash were drawn to sound, and because of Rudo's yelling, they had now noticed them. These creatures couldn't be killed with ordinary weapons, and the only option they had was to sneak away. But that chance was gone now. As one of the monsters crept closer, the masked man decided to deal with it first. A golden light surged from his arm, coating his umbrella and transforming it into a weapon. When the monster struck, the man spun the umbrella in front of it, shredding the creature like a blender. Its remains turned to dust. Rudo was shocked not just by the display of power, but also by how the monsters didn't regenerate afterward. Suddenly more monsters approached, but the masked man confidently leaped into battle, with swift strikes. From his umbrella, he cut through them and then floated back down. Faced the last monster, which spit a ball of acid at him. He blocked it with his umbrella, scattering the acid, which exploded on contact with the garbage below. Using the monster's head as a platform, the man jumped even higher, pouring more energy into his umbrella and expanding it. Then, he dove, cutting through the beast and the ground beneath it in one devastating strike. After the battle, he returned to Rudo, who asked who the hell he was. The man removed his mask and introduced himself as Injin, a simple cleaner. But the poisoned air made him regret taking the mask off. He cursed Rudo for a tan. At that moment, Rudo collapsed. While unconscious, Rudo dreamed of a childhood memory. He had once returned home after being bullied and pushed into a sewer because he told others that objects were alive. He'd asked Rudo if it was true that objects gained souls when treated with care. As Rudo cleaned his wounds, he explained that it was just an old legend meant to help people cherish their belongings, but personally, He liked to believe it was true. Rudo had asked if even his gloves could gain a soul someday, and Regdo had said that if he treated them with care, they would. Rudo woke up from the dream to find himself chained and being dragged by Injin. Furious, he shouted at him to let him go. Injin replied calmly that he was taking him somewhere safe. But Rudo no longer cared. He wanted to return to the sphere and get his revenge. Those words stopped Injin in his tracks. He told Rudo that returning to the sphere was impossible. It wasn't just in the sky, it was constantly moving. Rudo refused to accept that. He accused Injin of hiding the truth and threatened to scream until more monsters came. Annoyed, Injin agreed to show him the reality of this place. He dragged Rudo to a clearing inside a canyon, a place cleaner than anything else around. Without saying much, Injin dropped him there and walked away. Rudo shouted for him to at least remove the chains, but Injin ignored him. Moments later, a group of men wearing gas masks emerged from nearby trucks. Rudo wondered if these were the inhabitants of this place. They were clearly curious about him, especially based on his clothes. One asked if he came from the sphere. Rudo nervously admitted he had fallen from it. At that, the men excitedly removed their masks. They were thrilled they had only ever found dead sphere dwellers before. Now, they had a living one. They examined Rudo's face eagerly. Though they seemed friendly at first, things took a dark turn. Soon, Rudo was bound tightly and thrown into a truck. He didn't understand what was happening. Outside, the men celebrated. They talked about how valuable a living sphere it was. People were willing to pay a fortune for body parts and clothing. From the dead sphere itself, having a live one was beyond rare. The group's leader explained why. The people below hated this. They had poisoned the land, ruined the air, and created monsters through their waste. Many had lost everything because of them. Now, given the chance, they would take revenge. The leader mockingly offered Rudo food, rotten meat and spoiled leftovers. He laughed, saying spirits were too spoiled to even touch trash, let alone eat it. But when he tried to force-feed Rudo, he made a fatal mistake. Rudo bit down hard on his fingers, tearing flesh from bone. Then, he devoured the rotten food himself, declaring it wasn't trash, just food that could still be eaten. The captors were horrified. They'd never seen someone like this. That was just the beginning. Fueled by rage at being labeled trash, Rudo's power awakened again. He shattered his chains, leaped out of the truck, and released energy that lifted the objects around him. Injin watched from a distance, pleased. Rudo had turned out to be a giver, someone who could give life to objects and draw out their power. Rudo remembered Regdo's words, that if you treated things with care, they would return that care. Their leader ordered them to destroy the chain, knowing that givers were powerless without their chosen objects. They succeeded in knocking the chain away, but to their shock, Rudo simply picked up a tire and turned that into a weapon. Even Injin was impressed. This was rare, even for powerful givers. Rudo defeated the group swiftly and approached their leader, who could only curse in fear. Just as Rudo prepared to strike, Injin stepped in and stopped him. Rudo snapped out of his frenzy. His powers faded, the tire turned to dust, and a nosebleed trickled down his face. Confused, he asked what had just happened. Injin explained that using such power so recklessly would exhaust him. He apologized, admitting that this had all been a test. He promised to explain everything about this world and about Rudo's powers, but only if Rudo agreed to join the cleaners. They needed people like him to fight the monsters, but that was too much for Rudo to take in. He said he wasn't interested in joining anyone.